So, in the mid 1930s, after the rise of the far right to power, Germany was a nation ruled by rage and grievances. Still salty after having lost the First World War and having all of their colonies stripped from them, the capitalists and far right in Germany decided that the world owed them everything and began turning the rage that they had been harvesting for years into demands for recognition and power on the world stage. The first demand came in 1936 when they demanded that the German army should be allowed to return to the French border, an area that had been demilitarized as a condition of the First World War peace treaty. Now, this was enough to give France and Britain a legal justification to declare war on the Nazis, but instead they let it go and asked the Nazis to please not do anything like that again. To which the Nazis said, yes, of course, that's all we wanted anyway. A year later, in 1937, the Nazis said that, well, since Austria is so culturally close of Germany, well, it just makes sense that Austria should, kind of be annexed and absorbed into Germany. Now, this was enough to give France and Britain a legal justification to declare war on the Nazis. But instead, they let it go and asked the Nazis to please not do anything like that again. To which the Nazis said, yes, of course, that's all we wanted anyway. We're good now, we're good. Then, a year later in 1938, the Nazis demanded that a large part of Czechoslovakia be given to Germany. This is, of course, a violation of international law, as both France and Britain had given guarantees to Czechoslovakia to protect their sovereignty. This should have been enough to give France and Britain a legal justification to declare war on the Nazis. But instead they let it go, signed the Munich Agreement and asked the Nazis to please not do anything like that again. To which the Nazis, of course, said, yes, of course, we're done, that's all we wanted, swear to God. A few months later, Germany would invade the rest of Czechoslovakia and annex the entire country. This is a violation of international law and gave France and Britain a legal right to declare war on the Nazis. Instead, they let it go. But this time, they strongly condemned what the Nazis are doing and demanded that the Nazis not do anything like that again or cross any more red lines. Then, a few months later in 1939, the Nazis demanded parts of Poland be given to them. This time, France and Britain finally put their foot down and say no, and tell the Nazis that if they attack Poland, then France and Britain would declare war on them. But the Nazis by this point had lost all respect for the limp and powerless words and red lines and strong condemnations of France and Britain. And Germany invaded Poland, and this kicks off the Second World War in Europe. France and Britain, despite doing nothing for years but strongly condemning the Nazis, were finally in a war with Germany. Except after 3 years of appeasing the Nazis and letting them do whatever they wanted without consequence, meant Germany had been able to control Austria, Czechoslovakia, and now Poland, absorbing all of that land, industry, and resources into the German war machine, making them much more powerful than they were back in 1936 when they first moved their little army to occupy the French border, which, in hindsight, should have been the red line all along. And the consequences for appeasing these fascists for so long meant that the Nazis were so powerful now that what would have been a smaller regional war turned into a world war. In fact, it'll turn into the biggest war in human history. So the moral of the story, kids, is that you do not appease, negotiate, or try to find middle ground with fascists because they aren't interested in finding it with you. Their goal is domination and totalitarianism, and no matter what they say to you when you try to be diplomatic with them or try to debate them, their goals are not the same as your goals, and peace to them means the total subjugation of everyone under their boots. So next time some fascist demands you respect their points of view and have civil debate with them, remember the golden rule. When you give a fascist an inch, they will take your whole country. Anyway, something to think about.